Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here today. Today I'm going to be hopefully giving everyone a framework on how they can understand the music industry, where the power is, where the money is, and if you're trying to build something that speaks to music, hopefully giving you an avenue to do so effectively. So the first thing to understand about the music industry is that it's an extremely complicated web of rights, royalties, and pretty old infrastructure. In fact, the way that rights management and royalties are managed today was first created in 1851, back when people that were writing sheet music felt that they deserved some of the money that was being made at the conferences, or not the conferences, the concerts that were performing them. So before we dive into what to build, how to build, where the money is, etc., let's do a quick music industry 101. I think as music consumers, we like to think that there's maybe one wall between you and the artist. Maybe that's Spotify, maybe that's a streaming platform or a live streaming platform, maybe it's just the live show. The music industry actually has these various barriers between you and the artists. I didn't even include in here things like social media and how artists reach their fans. Right now I'm focusing on how recorded or performed music reaches a fan. So on the left-hand side, we have publishers and labels. Those are the people that, along with the artists, own said music, the recording, the actual songs, the writing, the compositions. Those three entities own the metadata of the music. Then you have distributors who are responsible for collecting that metadata and sending it to different platforms, like streaming platforms. And you have your collecting agencies. So the public right, or the performing rights organizations and the mechanical rights organizations. And finally, you get that layer that's between you and all of that bureaucracy, which are the streaming services, live shows, media, like TV, games, music, and then radio, in case some of you still listen to that. So when you're building a company in music, most people are sort of building on that first layer of interaction with the users. They're looking to build a new streaming platform, a new fan-based platform, a new type of ticketing platform. If you want to do that, you need your metadata from publishers and labels. You need to know who is owed. You need to get the music itself. There's a lot of data that you need to get things off the ground. And if you want to do that, all of that is going to be licensed through distributors. This is a really important piece of the puzzle. Let's say if you wanted to start a streaming platform or a fan-based platform or a ticketing platform, there's so much licensing and expensive licensing that goes into just being able to potentially one day use any of that information, any of that data, and you're going to be talking to distributors to get it, and then you're going to owe the PROs and the MROs. A lot of people don't even know that there are three types of royalties out there. There's the mechanical royalties, there's the publishing royalties, and then there's the sync royalties. Sync royalties having to do with anything that is other media speaking to music. So film, television, gaming. All of those sort of middle entity middlemen, they're collecting on behalf of the publishers and labels, not even necessarily the musicians themselves. So after the labels and the publishers have taken their cut, whatever us as the consumer have paid, at that point, maybe the artists, the songwriters are seeing their small cut. And that's just in the United States of America. Every single country is different. They have different laws, they have different agencies, different governing powers. It's a nightmare. So as you can imagine, with such a complicated industry and system, there are a lot of challenges and struggles that the artist at the very end of the food chain is experiencing. Things like payment delays, right? Money is switching hands many, many times before it actually sees a creator. It's an opaque system. So something that I think is important to note is a lot of these rights are written by people into forms, maybe once. If there's a typo on the form, or if they forgot to mention one of the producers, one of the mixers, they're not going to see their royalties, and they'll never be able to check if they were well documented or properly documented in that entire sort of hand-changing flow of how the money moves for the music industry. And then you have the issue of how an artist can actually reclaim their relationship with the fans. Right now, it's very much in the hands of social media. And I think we've all sort of heard many times how challenging it is to reach your many thousands of followings or even build a following organically. And then the last one that I wanted to put in here is the sort of impending threat of artificial intelligence for musicians, right? It's a very powerful tool for music creation, but it has to be trained on something. So there are some huge concerns around copyright infringement, about AI voices replacing human voices. And then at the end of the day, there's also the issue of AI voices or musicians taking a piece of the pie of like that final royalty pool, which is already quite small for the artists themselves. Now, speaking more to you guys, the builder struggle is that sort of expensive barrier to entry for licensing, the legal, it's gated, right? Like the majors don't necessarily want every application in the world to have access to their super prized IP because then they can't control it. So that's the first problem, the first dilemma. Then it's an operational nightmare, right? In just the United States alone, there are hundreds and thousands of agencies, publishers, et cetera, that you're beholden to, and then if you wanted to go international, right, that's just a good luck. And then of course the tech is rapidly outpacing, sort of similarly in crypto, what the infrastructure currently legally can support. But that presents an opportunity for people that are building in the space. Collective breath. Music 101 over. Where is the money in music? So over on that side, I sort of outlined where I believe you have sort of the greenest pastures on what can be done in music. Because everything in red is extremely tied up in that machine that I outlined earlier. So fan clubs, merchandise, AI model training, all of that is a big question mark in the music industry currently. All of these, anything to do with streaming, film, advertising, physical sales of music, all of that has been spoken for, extremely complicated, back office nightmare stuff. In my perspective, there are two main tasks for builders when it pertains to music. You have your hero's task, which is actually taking that complicated web and digitizing it. If we just put rights collection and management on chain, you will already have cut out like thousands of middlemen, created a system that is transparent for artists to see and understand what they're owed, and creating like a much more efficient industry altogether. But that is a very complicated task, because a lot of agencies, corporations, et cetera, benefit from the fact that we have this mess of an industry. So here I just set up a few examples of what that hero's task could be. I won't talk through all of them because time is short, but you can take a photo or screenshot and look through these later. The sort of second direction that one could go in is the disruptor's task. So building products that actually break the mold of how the music industry has existed up until date and exists today. If you build in this way, you're actually demanding better infrastructure exist. And I think this is something that people building in crypto, also smaller companies or people like startup ideas, right? Like this is a really good place to start, because the more we do projects like this, the more bigger players in the industry have to listen and have to start moving things in a more modernized direction. So these types of ideas, right, are rethinking the platforms. So if we're thinking of decentralized social media, if we're thinking of decentralized streaming, it's creating platforms that put more power in the hands of the artist, that put more power in the hands of the fan. I think we're all really passionate about that. Breaking the rules with indies. So this is another section that's really powerful, is artists that aren't signed to labels own their rights, own their music. It's a lot harder to compel to them, or like to appeal to the masses if you're working with independent musicians. But if you can work with them and show that whatever you're building with them is effective and lucrative and fast, eventually signed musicians are going to want that product, or they're going to want that that access, and their labels and publishers at the end of the day work for them, and we'll have to listen. And then the last piece that I love here is just getting creative with that sort of revenue section that I outlined earlier, which is AI, fan clubs, NFTs, and all of these like gray zones that haven't really been accounted for yet as far as traditional royalties are concerned. All of these different projects, all these different types of platforms, at the end of the day, their job is to empower the creator. The more we do that, that gets us closer to sort of saving the music industry. Something to note is that the music industry itself has been trying to put music on chain, music rights on chain, since the Bitcoin white paper was launched. Like everyone saw it in the industry, but no one has been able to do it. Back then it would have been super expensive, really inaccessible. Like, how do we even wrap our heads around how that would have been done back then? Today, especially thinking through what we're talking about in this conference, I think we actually stand a chance at being able to realize that vision that we had 12 years ago. This right here is just a little example of what my brain dreamed of could be a really effective use case of like a modular blockchain for music and rights management. At the bottom here, at the top, you have your decentralized access and usage. So all these different ways that players want to use music, why don't you just make a permissions layer where, as long as you have paid X or show that you have X rights or whatever, you have the access that you need for whatever project, at whatever scale you want. And at the end of the day, right, the labels are still getting exactly what they want. This isn't hard to do today. It just hasn't been attempted. That would remove that barrier of entry for the startup trying to work with IP. Then you have, this is like a really important one too, the automated and instant royalty payments and rights management. Imagine a Merkle tree, right, where money goes in, rights managed, every artist, every publisher, every whatever, every label has their wallet, everything's coming automatically. You're not waiting that 6 to 9 months to get your money's worth. A fact that I think everyone in this room should know is that $1.5 billion a year is unclaimed royalties just sitting in the MLC. Every 3 years, so $5.5 billion every 3 years, that money can be swallowed by the rights organizations and never has to be distributed to artists. $5.5 billion sitting in an interest accruing pool in crypto could do a lot for creators if that interest was redistributed to artists and not to rights organizations themselves. And having that be transparent, you would no longer have that issue of artists not even knowing what they're owed or if they've missed out on royalties. So that piece is really important, and hopefully someday someone does it. Then you have this sort of fluffy layer of metadata. You have your rights ownership metadata, your descriptive metadata, like what the song is, so the album cover, etc., and recommendation metadata that I think can be a space where the users can be rewarded. So let's say they're listening to a song, take a minute, write down how you're feeling. That goes into a public data bank that then someone building a new streaming platform could come in, reward those users, right, for giving that rich data and create more tailored experiences for the fan, right? That's just one example. And the last one is decentralized and encrypted file storage. right now. The music is stored in hundreds of distributors, AWS accounts, but we have the opportunity to, again, empower artists, empower the fans, distributing sort of that file storage and rewarding them for that. Ultimately, protecting the music itself. So that's the hero's task, what I outlined. And if that isn't for you, then again, just build projects that in their DNA, in the way that they function, are demanding a stronger, better, more modernized infrastructure for creatives. At the end of the day, I think that's the first step of many, and hopefully will inspire the creation of finally putting music rights on chain. And that's it.